Oh, it's the midweek edition of Legal AF. It's Karen Friedman-Agnifilo. Yes, don't adjust your monitors. Karen Friedman-Agnifilo, my longtime friend, colleague, podcast partner, and practicing lawyer, is here with me on the midweek edition of Legal AF. We have so much to talk about and things that we can't talk about. But first, let's kick it off with Midas in the news. Yes, Midas is in the news. It's public because the White House made it public. Ben Meiselas got the ultimate get. He got the get. He did Joe Biden. I think it's going to be like, it's the exclusive. It's Joe Biden like you've never seen him. He's unplugged. He's unfiltered. He's lame duck. And he's with Ben Meiselas and the Midas Touch Network. And that's a reflection of the hard work of the brothers to put this network together, this channel together and all of that. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll dive right into the intersection of law and politics. Can't think of anybody better to do it, especially on all things New York, than Karen Friedman-Agnifilo. Danny boy, the District Attorney of New York, the Manhattan DA, got an amazing ruling, one that we expected. We talked about it at length in Legal AF before, denying that immunity about evidence applies to the 34 felony count conviction against Donald Trump. And why would it? And the judge took pains in his 41 pages, Judge Brashan, to walk through all the ways. Let me count the ways that Donald Trump did not, and his lawyers did not preserve the objection over several witnesses. And then let me also remind Donald Trump what this case is about. We got another motion that still hasn't been ruled on by the judge. The judge has just reminded everybody of that in a new order. We've got an unsealing of some information that got filed in December, early December, but we didn't know about it till yesterday. Was there juror misconduct that led to Donald Trump's convictions? And if there were, where's the motion by the Trump side to vacate and throw out the conviction as a result? What am I talking about? You'll know soon when we get there. And in the giant sentencing clock, has it moved ever closer to ticking to midnight to sentence Donald Trump before the inauguration and then having the sentence actually start sometime after? We'll kick it around, Karen and me. Then let's turn to Trump threats. Trump threats, they're all the rage between now and the remaining 35 or so days before the inauguration. First, Donald Trump attacked, recently, this morning. He's like the Walking Dead. I mean, I know you develop insomnia as you get older, but these 3 a.m., he's like the Walking Dead. He wakes up, starts tweeting, Liz Cheney's a criminal and should be prosecuted because of her work on the Jan 6 committee. Let me remind Donald Trump of something. Almost every witness that testified against him in the Jan 6 committee to allow them to do their work had an R next to their name for Republican. Almost every one of them. I can't even remember a Democrat that testified in that case. There were two Republicans that were on the committee. There's a little something called the speech and debate immunity, speech and debate immunity for members of the House. So, Liz Cheney's not scared of Donald Trump, and she is showing how you do it, corporate media, how you have a steel rod up your backside to defend democracy. You don't do what ABC News and Disney did, where they effectively disgorged 1 year of George Stephanopoulos' salary at $15 million to Donald Trump by handing him. They had a winning hand in a case involving an important case about First Amendment and freedom of speech and the Fourth Estate, and they didn't do it because they're so we'll kick around why they didn't do it. Now the Des Moines Register is next up. Donald Trump suing them under consumer fraud statutes because a pollster, who by the way is already retired, pollster Ann Seltzer, said that Kamala, in her final poll, Kamala was going to win Iowa by 3 points. How did that work out? Well, it was a miss. It was a small miss. It was a 16-point miss because Donald Trump won Iowa by 13 points. But to Donald Trump, just to show you how crazy his retribution is, to Donald Trump, he has to sue the Des Moines Register. How is he damaged? He won the state. We'll talk about it with Karen Friedman-Agnifilo as we see the impact already of the interim effect of Donald Trump going after the media and politicians. You see the genuflecting, you see the butt kissing, and you get the owner of the Los Angeles Times. It was bad enough that he put the kibosh on his editorial board, doing an endorsement of Kamala Harris when it mattered most. Now he's told the editorial board as the owner, take a break from writing about Trump, won't you? Give him a break. Are you effing kidding me? That's what you tell a newsroom? Take a break on Donald Trump? Okay. Well, I think everybody should take a break from the LA Times and take a page out of Harry Littman's book, the contributor here on the Midas Touch Network. And then Texas, of course, has drawn first blood. They are going after the shield laws in 23 states, including in New York. And the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, who else, is suing a New York doctor. Remember this name, Dr. Maggie Carpenter, and her organization, Abortion Coalition for Telemedicine, ACT, A-C-T. They need your help. She's a hero. We're going to talk about how she and her doctor partner and her lawyer partner, one of the people that runs ACT is a lawyer. That's a good thing. They know how to read law, because Ken Paxton doesn't. And so they've been sending medication abortion pills like mifepristone and the other one that I can't pronounce to women to allow them to do what they do with abortion pills, including in states where it is illegal to get an abortion, relying on shield laws. Well, Ken Paxton doesn't like that. He's suing, claiming that she's practicing law without a license in Texas, and that she's violating all sorts of other statutes to try to stop women in Texas from having any shred of reproductive dignity or reproductive rights in that state. Matt Gaetz back in the news for all the wrong reasons. Matt Gaetz, I knew something was up when all of a sudden he was posting on social media. I was a bit of a womanizer when I was in my 30s. I'm like, oh, here we go. So something must be happening. Yes, it's happening. The long-awaited House Ethics Committee report that brought down Matt Gaetz, just the threat of it brought down Matt Gaetz, is going to be released. I don't know why. I want to hear from Karen why she thinks it's being released now at the last minute. Is he a sexual predator or not? Is he a sex trafficker or not? Is he a rapist of underage girls? Yes or no? I want to know what's in that report as much as anybody, because it continues to matter. And this is going to give Karen special heartburn because she sort of predicted this. Did anybody see the social media post where Matt Gaetz is positing that he can return to the 118th Congress? He can return to 119th Congress and go after other Congresspeople with sex crimes and sex harassment cases that they settled under the table. Oh, here we go. Let's talk about Matt Gaetz. And then we'll touch briefly on, pardon me, the new reporting that the United States Supreme Court before the inauguration, meaning under the Biden administration's watch, is going to take up the case of whether the Biden administration and the full Congress can pass a bill to force the Chinese and the Chinese government, let's call TikTok for what it is. It's ultimately owned. Yes, it's owned by ByteDance, but ByteDance is owned by the Chinese government, to force them to divest and sell their American subsidiary or get out of the American market. Can they be forced to do that under national security and other laws, or is it unconstitutional? In other words, do the Chinese have First Amendment rights in America? That's interesting. The Supreme Court wants to get to the bottom of it. They granted an emergency hearing in January. God, we got so much to talk about. Where's Karen? I need her.
Hey, Papa. It's good to see you.
First of all, fantastic to see you. We got to catch you. The last time I talked to you, you're recovering from surgery, and then I was like, this can't be the same KFA. And then I read you got a new client. So is that a client we can say his name on midweek?
I mean, I do represent Luigi Mangione, and I will be representing him in New York on his case. But in terms of what I'm saying about it, I'm not really talking about it yet. We have a big court appearance coming up, and that's where I'll be speaking in court. So, but it's great to see you. Yes, I'm still recovering. Timing.
You're going to be on crutches in court?
Unfortunately, that's just the way it's going to be. I will be on crutches, and you got to do the world keeps turning, right? You got to keep going. I want to though say one thing. I don't want to gloss over by not mentioning how incredible it is that Midas Touch got the Biden interview. I mean, this is the thing that 60 Minutes used to get, right? Talk about mainstream media, legacy media, whatever you want to call it. Midas Touch is the new thing. This is what is going to be where people go to get real news. And to have the president of the United States endorse that and basically say, this is where the truth comes. This is where the news comes. The legacy media, mainstream media, that's what used to be. That's corporate media, as you pointed out, with the LA Times owned by billionaires. You know, that's the has-beens. And I think the thing that came out of this election is people realized this is the new media, and that Midas Touch got it. And that our Ben, I was so proud, like as if I'm not his mother, obviously, but I felt
you birthed him.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I felt proud, because, you've been there since the beginning. I think you were there since day one,
Employee badge number 4.
Exactly. Right. It's like the three brothers, and then Popak came and we have to dig up, which we did once, the very first couple of episodes of Legal AF. It's beautiful. I love it. It's amazing. And it's amazing in we have to make sure we post it and people have to watch it. It's amazing in this like campy kind of fun way. Yeah. But you guys, you've been there since pretty much day one, and I've been there since like week one, and I think it's amazing. And I think people have to realize what this means, not just because of the interview, but what this says about the Midas Touch Network and what this says about news going forward. Okay. So it's unbelievable. And we have big news here. And guess what? We are going to just play the promotion right now so that everybody can see how incredible this is.
I got great news. I've been going back and forth while we were starting our recording for the show, and I just got permission from the brothers. This is breaking news. Ready? We're Sydney. Breaking news, Sydney. I got permission from the brothers to be the first on the Midas Touch Network to run the promo for the interview.
Wow.
Here we go. Everybody, I'm going to take a beat so you can go get popcorn. And then we're going to run the promo. Here we go.
Mr. President, you're going to be at the inauguration. Some union leaders and even some kind of rank and file workers ended up voting for the other guy. How do you square that? Do you think you reach a deal in Gaza before your term ends as you prepare to leave the White House? Any other regrets that you have? Anything you wish you would have done differently? His rhetoric, what he's done, what he's threatened.
That's not America. That's not who the hell we are. We're not going away. I'm not going away.
Okay. I mean, come on. I mean, look at Ben. Look at Ben.
Adorable.
Adorable with suit and tie. Well, no, I'm not kidding. The early photo when you mentioned the show he did 4.5 years ago. We'll find a picture of that one day. It literally looks like I took my son to work day. Like he looks so young. And I was like, and he's not heavy, but he was really skinny in this photo. And I was like, it looks like I took my 12-year-old to work. But look where he's in. CNN's not there. MSNBC's not there. Rachel Maddow's not there. George Stephanopoulos isn't there. Ben Meiselas. I love it.
Yeah, it's just what this means for Midas Touch Network. I think it has to be emphasized, and it's really incredible. And I'm so happy, and I'm so happy to be a part of this as well.
Well, let's and to on the back end, the other thing, even though Karen, understandably, and we respect, mad respect for Karen as a client to represent, while continuing, of course, to be a leader on Legal AF. The rest of us can talk about where appropriate, and we won't do it here, Luigi Mangione, because I don't want to have this optic of Karen listening to me talk about her case. But on Legal AF, the YouTube channel, I'm doing some work over there, and I think on True Crimes, we're doing some work over there. So there's other places to get your fix of what's going on in that case with Karen than here. So we are respectful to our audience, but we have to be respectful that Karen.
Just to be clear, you will have no inside information from me. Right. No, I love you dearly, but I'm not going to whisper in your ear anything. Everything that you talk about is going to be things that is either on the record or that you've read yourself or you've seen yourself. And you're going to analyze it from your perspective, and that's what you will do. And if there comes a time where it's appropriate for me to talk about the case and it's best for my client, thankfully I don't need to go somewhere else. I've got this amazing audience that we've built up over years, and we can always talk about it. But
I agree to that on one condition: that if you ever decide that it's in your client's best interest to talk, that you do it first on Legal AF.
Well, if that's in his best interest, I will.
Thank you. That's all I needed. I got it. Sid, write it down. All right, let's move on. As long as you're making an appearance this week in court, let's talk about your old office and a win that they had. That's
going to be, by the way, think about it. Like, it's my old office,
I have thought about it.
But yes, let's talk about my old office that I used to work for, the Manhattan DA's office.
So just to get everybody up to speed, I don't like to talk in too much shorthand because we lose people who are just tuning in for the first time or don't follow it as closely as we do. There have been not one but two separate motions in the last several months filed by Donald Trump and his team to try to, what we call in the law, vacate, kick out, throw out his convictions. And he didn't get convicted once of 34 counts. He got convicted 34 times by a 12-0 jury in New York, fair and impartial. After weeks of testimony, mountains of evidence against Donald Trump in the Stormy Daniels hush money cover-up election interference case. I don't really have a good shorthand for that case. It always comes out like that. And so the two motions that have happened since the immunity decision, and the other one in July by the Supreme Court, and the other one since November 5th, is by Donald Trump. And in one, he argued that the immunity decision by the United States Supreme Court, which really talks about at its core, when you can and cannot prosecute a person who held the office of the presidency for his conduct or her conduct, depending upon whether it was official conduct, core constitutional conduct, or private prosecutable conduct. Not whether a conviction already returned by a jury about a time period when the person wasn't president, immunity applies. The only issue that is up for grabs, which the judge reminded everybody, is not whether the core criminal conduct that Donald Trump was convicted of is immune from prosecution. Even his lawyers don't argue that. It's whether some discrete pieces of evidence, particularly some emails, a couple of social media posts, and the testimony of three people, one of which, Karen, you talked at length about at the time during the jury trial, Hope Hicks, Michael Cohen, and Madeleine Westerhout. Madeleine Westerhout is like the executive assistant to when Donald Trump finally got into the White House. Hope Hicks was campaign press secretary and then press secretary in the White House, and Michael Cohen was Michael Cohen. And the fundamental issues there had to do with 99% of the crime activities took place before Donald Trump was president. That was the purpose. That's to avoid the October surprise, was to pay off Stormy Daniels. So the conspiracy to pay off was all before the presidency. So none of the immunity decision applies, and even none of the evidence analysis applies. The payback of the money, some of that took place while the guy was president. And so the judge did this elaborate 41-page analysis. So I'll turn it over to Karen now. That is what we just got a ruling on. Even after we talk about this ruling, there's one more motion still left. A motion on justice grounds. There's a word for it. I'll let Karen handle it. There's a factor analysis that has to be done for that type of motion. The judge is still sitting on that one. Let's presume he gets that done in time against Donald Trump. Then what? So let me turn it over to my illustrious colleague, renowned criminal defense lawyer, Karen Friedman-Agnifilo.
Look, this decision that Judge Merchan issued, because don't forget there's two motions that were outstanding. One still is, right? This motion to dismiss that was filed recently. This is just the one on presidential immunity that we've been waiting for a while. We've been waiting to see what's Judge Merchan going to say. Is he going to say that there was inappropriate or evidence that should not have come in at the trial that did come in? And if so, would it be held to be reversible error? And so we've all been kind of waiting with bated breath for this decision, and it came down, and it was an interesting decision for many reasons, because Popok, we've both read many court decisions, and it's really at the judge's discretion about how long or short, how deep the analysis is, right? Sometimes they just don't even judges can make a decision and just say denied or granted. They don't even have to explain themselves. Sometimes they decide to do a docket entry online in federal court. A lot of judges do that, and they'll put 1 or 2 lines, right? It's just something that they enter into the official record. It's like I said, a docket entry. And then you've got these written decisions, and not everything is a written decision. And then when a decision is written, not everything is quote unquote published, so there are different types of decisions that courts like to issue, and it's entirely in their discretion. And judges only publish, meaning they become kind of law that you cite, and that people can reference, other lawyers can reference in the future. They only publish decisions that they think are important enough and that are kind of big enough to become law that is relied upon. And so this was obviously a published decision, but it's also one where the judge is very much the judge very much made sure is going to be very long. Okay, this was not a short decision. This is a very long decision, and it's interesting, I think, because he gave the history of everything, including all the times that Trump raised presidential immunity, including in E. Jean Carroll, which is a civil, as he called it, unrelated case. Gave sort of this very long, like if you want to know kind of everything that's been going on with Trump, whether it's E. Jean Carroll, whether it's the Jack Smith cases, this case, it kind of gave this history of all of the cases and did it in the context of things like presidential immunity and all of his claims that he made, because they are sort of related, right? He makes this claim in this case and then a different claim in this case, and they're all related, and they all go to one kind of ultimate decision. Just going sideways for a minute, what this tells me, interestingly, is if there is ever a sentence in this case, Judge Merchan is going to absolutely take into consideration his conduct, Trump's conduct in other cases, because he clearly has no problem citing all of the other cases, including the civil ones. So I found that very interesting. And at the end of the day, he analyzed the law, I think, very crisply and very cogently, and applied the law to the facts and said, look, 2 federal courts have ruled that, or 2 times one federal court has ruled, Judge Hellerstein, that Donald Trump's conduct in this Manhattan DA case was entirely personal. And so therefore it's had nothing to do with his presidency, and therefore it wasn't quote unquote removed to federal court. So that analysis had to be done in order to determine whether or not it would be removed to federal court, and it wasn't. And so that was very much, it was important here as well, because it says very similar analysis, right? Was this personal, or was this in the color of your duties as president? Was this presidential or personal? And so essentially, he basically said, look, it's all personal. But he also acknowledged that the Supreme Court had this one category of, and again, this is what we've said all along, that this is what it would be. The Supreme Court acknowledged, that, okay, so immunity doesn't apply, but the evidence that came in, did any of the evidence, was it inappropriately allowed in? And he said, look, by the way, some of the stuff you're citing, you didn't preserve on the record. You didn't make objections. And that's something a defense attorney is supposed to do, right? You're supposed to, as the stuff comes in, you have to say objection, you say why, and you preserve the issue. He didn't make that. He didn't preserve the issue for some of the evidence, which was interesting that he pointed that out. But he said, but even if, I'll do an analysis, and I'll tell you, even if it were, even if you had preserved it, I would rule the same. And what he said was all of the evidence that they didn't preserve, either way, that was harmless. I don't think it was something that falls under this category of presidential immunity, and so therefore the evidence should not have come in this purely private case. But even if you had preserved it, it does not fall into that category. And so then he went to the things that you and I talked about, and it's just interesting because we've talked about this, and we could go back to other Legal AF episodes, and we specifically said there's a few things that we were concerned about. One of them was the Hope Hicks testimony, and another was a couple of the tweets, and the judge pointed out basically that, look, to say that, oh, well, some tweet, every tweet that I say is because I used the president's account, every single one of them, even personal ones, that just that cloaks it with immunity. No, that's not the case. You have to do an analysis. And he said, the tweets and the Hope Hicks, some of the tweets and some of the Hope Hicks testimony, we said we were worried about, right? Because Hope Hicks, don't forget, this is the one piece of evidence. I'm just going to say it because I think it's the one thing that will even be an issue on appeal when they appeal this. It's when she testified in court, and I was there. It was the only day I attended court, and I happened to be there, and it was jaw-dropping. It felt like a Perry Mason moment because she broke down crying and basically admitted that Donald Trump said that he felt like, yeah, I'm glad this didn't come out. I'm glad the Stormy Daniels stuff didn't come out before the election. He admitted this was about the election, and that was critical, an element of the crime here. So, and she worked for him at the time in the White House, and it was well into the time that he was president. So it was the one thing that I worried about could potentially be ruled as inadmissible. And the issue with that is, on summation, the prosecution, one of the arguments was you can't believe Michael Cohen. And on summation, the prosecution argued, look, this is really, you don't have to only believe Michael Cohen. Everything's corroborated. Listen to Hope Hicks because it was so powerful. And Hope Hicks, and he made a big deal out of the Hope Hicks testimony. I was worried about that. And the judge, pointed it out and said, even if that, he ruled that it was entirely okay to admit into evidence, it was permissible. But even if it wasn't, it was harmless error. And so he had a full-on harmless error analysis. I thought it was just a great decision, really well written, I think, for the appellate courts. He knows it's going to be appealed. He knows it's going to go up to the Supreme Court, and he wrote it as if it's going to go to the Supreme Court. This was, like I was saying before, and that's why I kind of explained, the different types of decisions judges could do. This one wrote it for a reason. He knows this is going to be deeply analyzed. He knows that this is going up all the way to the Supreme Court, and so he wrote this for them, and it feels very bulletproof to me. So. I'll admit, sometimes I go on a long time. So
no, that's not why.
You're probably leaning back and relaxing,
No. It has to do with the thing you and I talked. I'll leave it in this pod. It has to do with the thing that we talked about before we started in our lives, and I got a text related to it, so I got caught up in it for a moment. No, I always listen. Hope Hicks. Huh?
You have a personal life, Popak?
I do.
And meanwhile, I'm sitting here and all this, you can probably see me fidgeting because I'm trying to move the ice around on my knees.
I'm waiting. One day I'm waiting to see the coat hanger going down the cast. Whatever you got going on there to itch it. I get it. Scratch it.
I don't have any. I have to say, the doctor was amazing. He just 4 little holes and some stitches, and that's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
Really amazing. So we're going to talk about the other aspect of the Manhattan DA's case, which is this weird revelation that on December the 3rd, we just found out about it yesterday, that Donald Trump asked the judge to do 2 things. One, don't rule on this motion that we just spent a long time talking about because you're divested of your jurisdiction, obviously ignored by the judge. And the second was, and we have evidence of jury tampering. We have a juror who says he was tampered with. And that should nullify everything. And what the judge did about that. And we can talk about why we haven't seen a jury misconduct motion to vacate the convictions filed by Donald Trump, despite the fact that it was put in his letter. Then you and I will pick up with the inter rerum effect of what Donald Trump is doing and how different entities are reacting and the right way that you should react if you're attacked by Donald Trump and threatened with defamation or FBI investigation or a violation of consumer fraud or a lawsuit's filed against you. On one end of the continuum, you've got what ABC did and Disney. On the other end, you have what Liz Cheney's doing. And then we'll have to see what the Des Moines Register is going to do. We'll talk about Dr. Maggie Carpenter, my hero of the day, in her fight against Texas in making sure that women around this country have some measure, some shred of reproductive rights, the right to make a decision of their choice about whether to carry a fetus to term. and whether they can use medication abortion in order to accomplish that, where she prescribed the medication from New York to a woman who was in Texas and has now been sued as a result. And her organization, Abortion Coalition for Telemedicine, aptly named or acronymed ACT, A-C-T. We'll talk about that as well. Matt Gaetz, well, we'll just leave it at that. And then we'll talk about TikTok and whether TikTok is going to have to get rid of its little toy, which has been, through misinformation and disinformation, brainwashing Americans for a long, long time in competing unfairly in the marketplace of ideas. And what's Donald Trump's position about all that? I'll give it to you in a summary before we come back from a commercial break, which is, well, help get me elected. Okay. We have a lot of, Karen, rightly so, is we have a legal term for this, is cavelling about, you like that one? About Midas Touch and the brothers, and what's going on here with this getting President Biden to be interviewed. There's many ways to support independent commentary and analysis like we do here on the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF. You can hit the subscribe button on Midas Touch. You can go over to Legal AF, the new YouTube channel, which we built in advance of the election for this very day, in case it were to arrive, and hit the subscribe button there. You can, as Ben so eloquently put in a Midas Plus Substack writing he just did the other day. He said, we're never going to be owned by oligarchs. Don't worry about Midas Touch. But the ways to support us is that we have other shows on the network. Karen's got Mistrial with a couple of former prosecutors and good friends of hers, Tanya Perry and Kathleen Rice, which generally goes on Thursdays. You can support that. Legal AF, Wednesdays and Saturdays. And there it is. We got a Patreon for Legal AF. I appreciate that. And also, of course, the Legal AF YouTube channel. Hopefully you have a graphic for that as well, which you help us. I think we're up to 365,000 subscribers, something like that. And then we've got our advertisers and our sponsors who know who we are, who know what we are, who know what our audience is all about, and they want to be here. And they have committed and recommitted to us to keep our lights on, so to speak, even after the election. And we appreciate them. And we test these things out. If you can afford it, this is all discretionary income. If you have it, you afford it, it's something you think would be interesting to your life, bring you joy, try it out. Watch the ad. Watch the ad. Check it out. But these are the many ways that are generally free to support our channel, our network, and our vision. So now it's time for a word for our sponsors. Are you looking for something simple and delicious to add to your wellness routine? Well, here's the thing. I used to put regular honey into a lot of my foods, breakfast, tea, protein. But then I was introduced to Manakora, and Manakora puts that regular honey to shame. I love the flavor, richness, creaminess, and all the health benefits Manakora honey brings to the table. The best way to use Manakora is straight from the spoon first thing in the morning, letting the creamy texture melt in your mouth and coat your throat. Manakora honey is rich, creamy, and the most delicious honey you've ever had. It's ethically produced by Manakora's master beekeepers in the remote forest of New Zealand. Manakora honey contains powerful nutrients to support immunity and gut health. The bees collect the nectar from the Manuka tea tree in New Zealand. The nectar is packed with bioactives, and the honey that is produced has 3 times more antioxidants and prebiotics than your average honey. A special antibacterial compound called MGO also comes from the nectar of the tea tree. Manakora third-party tests every single harvest for MGO and makes these results available through their QR system. It's a game changer. And all you need is 1 heaped teaspoon each morning to get the most out of the amazing bioactives in Manuka. Additional usage through the day is completely fine, especially helping to cut out other sweeteners. It's a honey with superpowers. Now it's easier than ever to try Manakora honey. Head to manakora.com/legalaf to get $25 off the starter kit, which comes with an MGO 850 plus Manuka honey jar, 5 honey travel sticks, a wooden spoon, and a guidebook. Do you need a break from the crowded stores and endless gift lists? restore your zen, and embrace the natural power of cannabis this holiday season with Via. Whether you're enjoying a quiet evening at home or embracing the festive cheer, Via's premium THC and THC-free gummies will help you find your perfect holiday balance. Via is well renowned for their award-winning THC and THC-free gummies and vapes, THCA flower, soothing topicals, and calming drops, all crafted with the highest quality hemp sourced from trusted, independently owned American farms. And the best part? Via legally ships to nearly all states in the U.S. in discreet packaging directly to your door with a worry-free guarantee. No medical card required. Their Cloud 9 relief gummies help me unwind and relax after a long, stressful grind of a day and help me maximize my sleep. So if you're 21 plus, check out our link to Via's website in our description and use code LEGALAF for 15% off. Unlock the power of nature with Via's organic and vegan hemp extracts, perfect for relaxation and rejuvenation. Via is the only lifestyle hemp brand. They use compounds found in hemp along with active plant extracts to create products, each with a specific effect in mind. Whether you want to get better sleep, ease anxiety, enhance your mood, or just relax, they have something for you. They also have zero THC products. And if THC isn't for you, you can still take advantage of their CBD line with products designed for sleep, focus, and energy that will keep you glowing all year long. Their products range from 0 milligrams to 100 milligrams of THC, so these guys have you covered, whether you're looking to microdose or enjoy more potent effects. The THCA flower strains are grown with care and rigorously tested to ensure the highest quality, free from harsh pesticides or nasty chemicals. Over 500,000 customers served, farmed and crafted with care in the United States. This holiday season, gift yourself some peace of mind. If you're 21 plus, check out the link to Via in our description and use the code LEGALAF to receive 15% off. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. This holiday season, enhance your everyday with Via. Okay, we're back. Let's, Karen, did you get a chance? I know you've been busy. Did you get a chance to see the unsealed order by Judge Merchan and what apparently got filed in early December, which we're just learning about now, in which Donald Trump told the judge, don't you dare rule on the motion related to immunity. And also, by the way, there's juror misconduct. Did you get a chance to see any of that?
Yeah, I just was like, what is this juror misconduct? And why are we hearing about it now? And honestly, if there was actual juror misconduct, then it wouldn't have come out this way now. Like, it was kind of a weird, I don't know. I didn't really know how to make heads or tails of it, because juror misconduct and an allegation or an assertion of juror misconduct is extremely serious. If there's juror misconduct of any sort, that is the kind of thing that reverses a conviction. Anything like that, it's jury. A jury is sacrosanct. I mean, juries, you have to protect juries at all costs. I mean, I have accidentally gotten into, I shouldn't say accidentally, I have gotten into an elevator unintentionally, not realizing that one of my jurors on one of my trials is right there. And you have to, I mean, it is so awkward because you are not allowed to even look at them, say hello to them, nothing. And sometimes jurors will say hello to you and you don't want to be rude, but you cannot speak to them. You know, it's so difficult. You know, you have to make sure you don't talk to your witnesses in the hallways. A juror could be sitting on the bench right there. You have to make sure you don't talk to your colleagues about a case or friends about a case. Again, in a hallway, at lunch, you know, people go to lunch and lawyers and they talk about stuff and there's people at the next table. It could be your juror. Jurors will do things like, you know, read the paper when they're not supposed to, or talk to each other when they're not supposed to about the case. There's so many rules about how juries have to behave, that because if there's no kind of harmless error necessarily, I mean, there sort of is, but if there's actual misconduct, that is reversed. That's it. There's no like, okay, the verdict's over. Let's call the alternate and bring them in and preserve it. No, you do the trial all over again. Once you dismiss the jury, it's done. If there's juror misconduct, the case is reversed. So if there were jury misconduct in this case, we would have heard about it. There would have been motion practice about it. There'd even probably be hearings about it. You call the juror in, you ask questions. I mean, so I didn't even know what to make of this, because it seemed like maybe there was some proceeding about it that was sealed that we didn't know about, but I don't know. What did you make of it?
I agree with you. I think there was I think this was filed apparently in timing wise before they filed their motion on justice grounds. Because when you read the motion for the Clayton motion?
Exactly.
When you read the Clayton motion, there's no mention of juror misconduct.
Clayton motion, yeah, dismissal in the interest of justice.
They would have mentioned it. They would have said, oh, and by the way, there was juror misconduct. And so the judge was like, all right, if there's juror misconduct, then file a motion for juror misconduct to vacate the conviction. But you're telling me you don't want to do that, which means I can't hold a hearing and I can't get to the bottom of it. But you want me to put the unsworn statement of some juror and subject that person to being attacked on the public docket? I'm not doing that either. So the judge is just like fed up. And then Donald Trump comes back. So he's got no juror misconduct. I don't know where they got this from. Some knock on the door for some random juror. They must have thought better of it after they got to the bottom of it, because I haven't heard of any filings for motion for misconduct, vacating the conviction. So I don't think it exists. And there's bullshit. And then you have Donald Trump deciding that it's in his best interest to attack the one person on planet Earth that holds his liberty in the palm of his hand. This judge has not yet come up with the sentence.
I'll never understand his tactic to do that. That makes no sense.
Right, because as you said earlier in the segment, and for years before that, all of the conduct and behavior leading up to the moment of sentencing goes into the sentencing, including all of the attacks on the court system, on Judge Merchan, on staff, on family, on jury, on jurors, on Alvin Bragg with a baseball bat, everything. And so he wakes up in the middle of the morning, whatever time he gets up, and Donald Trump starts saying, the psychotic judge in New York who's partisan and biased and unhinged is going to topple our constitutional democracy in the office of the presidency with an unhinged. I'm like, okay, or you just effing relax. Okay, why don't you read the 41 pages or have somebody read it to you? Because if you read it, you would understand that even your own lawyers don't think immunity applies, except for some evidence. And the only issue for the judge was, hey, Trump, your lawyers, the ones you just promoted to like the number 2 and 3 spot in the Department of Justice, they don't really know how to run a New York trial, a state court trial. This is great for Karen. These federal white shoe lawyers who never really try cases, they kind of screwed it up, and they didn't preserve the objections for Westerhout or for Michael Cohen. And the judge was like, you didn't preserve it. You didn't object to it. You never raised supremacy or immunity or anything, or the office of the presidency. You did it barely for aspects of when Mr. Bove came up to my sidebar and talked to me about Hope Hicks. But even then, I don't find that her testimony falls into the bucket of using official conduct to prove unofficial conduct, because there was no unofficial conduct. The guy wasn't president. So the whole of the immunity decision for Merchan doesn't map onto this particular procedural thing where a guy gets convicted of a crime, and we're post-conviction and pre-sentencing, and he happened to get reelected. That doesn't really do it. So he's going to rule again. In my prediction, he's going to rule against him again in the next day, 2 days, 5 days, a week before Christmas, on Christmas Day. I don't know, on what we call the Clayton Act, Clayton motion. He's going to find that he's not going to use his equitable powers, that Donald Trump has tremendous unclean hands. He's not going to rip up the 34 count felony conviction like confetti, at a Fifth Avenue parade. He's not doing that. And then the judge is going to have to decide, let's go to sentencing. Because let me just leave it with this, Karen. If he doesn't sentence him and suspend the sentence until after the guy comes out, then what happens? We're going to wait around for 2 years of appeal through the United States Supreme Court, and then it's going to come back to him for sentencing? Sentence now and suspend it. Then let them take that up on appeal. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he absolutely would, if he could. I think it just depends, right? There's a few things that could happen. Number one, if he moves to sentencing, if he denies the motion to dismiss, I think you're going to see Donald Trump run to court. I don't know which court, whether he'll run to the Supreme Court, whether he'll run to the appellate courts here. Either way, because now this immunity decision, I think we're very quickly going to see that get appealed, right? He's going to appeal that, Trump. I think the next thing we're going to see is they're going to make a motion for a stay of these proceedings. And so if that happens, if Judge Merchan is essentially ordered to stay or stop the proceedings, if he denies this motion to dismiss and they run to get a stay order, then his hands are tied and he can't sentence him. So, I mean, it seems pretty, if the courts don't stay the proceeding, could he hold a sentencing? Yes, he could do one of two things. If he, let's hypothetically say he holds a sentencing, he could just sentence him to 0, just say the case is done, you're convicted, so that literally the case is just done and he goes as a fully vested convicted felon, right? There's no doubt that he is a convicted felon at that point. And the reason I say that is because in New York, there's this little quirk. You are convicted by a jury. Okay. So you can use that word. He's convicted, but it's not a conviction on your record. In other words, let's say you commit a second crime, the sentencing is different than if you are sent as if you commit just a first arrest offender. It's called a predicate felon. You have a prior felony conviction. That felony conviction, in order to count as a conviction for this predicate felony status, it has to be fully vested. It has to be not only did you plead guilty or you were convicted by a jury, but you were sentenced. Those two things have to happen. Doesn't matter if it's up on appeal. The appeal doesn't impact whether or not you are an actual convicted felon. So if he gets convicted, if he gets sentenced, no matter what it is, that even if it's stayed, that will actually make him a fully vested convicted felon, but he's still convicted of the crimes. But if it's a little bit of a law school class nuance, but I thought people might be interested in that.
Absolutely. So that's
and the only other thing I was going to say is you might be right. The other thing you could do, but in addition to saying, okay, you're sentenced to just, the equivalent of time served, you could give him a real sentence. And a real sentence here, if you were to look at the nature and history, all the factors in Clayton are basically the factors that go into sentence. The nature and history of the defendant, the character of the defendant, the seriousness of the crime, all of those things are things that go into are the things that go into sentencing. And frankly, this judge is going to look at all the cases, every one of them, and not just the conduct alleged in the cases, his conduct during the cases. That is all relevant. Who he is. He's someone who's been held in contempt 10 times in this case. He was held in contempt in front of Judge Arthur Engoron in the civil fraud case. He's somebody who lied. Judge Engoron said he lied on the record. He found him not credible. He's somebody who violated. I mean, the guy is like a walking violation of court orders. And so the judge can take that into consideration and take all of it into consideration. Plus, you can look at the seriousness of the crime. And I think your prediction of 1 to 2 years is about right for this case.
Yeah.
And that's what I think he'll get if he ever does get to sentencing. But as you said, he's not going to serve it till after he's president.
If his name was Bozo Jones, he'd be going away for a couple of years.
100%.
For doing what he said. All right, we'll continue to follow all that. Let's pick up with Donald Trump as president-elect. I'm not officially until Jan 6th, but we call him president-elect now. Getting up every day in every way on every bully pulpit he can find, going after his enemies list. It's part of it is that it's just a destabilizing penchant of his to be the 800-pound gorilla and to strike fear in the hearts of his enemies. We're seeing it in an international impact. Canada is in turmoil and could collapse over the tariff war that he tweeted about, having Trudeau having lost his number 2 finance minister in a noisy exit that's challenging his administration. Germany is about to collapse its government. France is about to collapse, and these things are not being made better off by Donald Trump. Here in the States, we have Donald Trump feeling randy, he's very bold. He's getting cocky because he got ABC News and Disney, who worries about apparently their licenses and making money with the government, and less about Donald Trump, who offered to pay $15 million because George Stephanopoulos repeated something that a federal judge in New York had already said, which is Donald Trump is a technical rapist as adjudged by the jury in 2 separate federal cases involving E. Jean Carroll. So why was it wrong for George Stephanopoulos to use that very term when he interviewed Nancy Mace? And everybody's all excited in MAGA world now of the settlement.
Nancy Mace, the same one who was completely obsessed with the transgender bathroom.
Yes.
Oh my God! I just put 2 and 2 together when you said that. She's the one who tweeted 300 times in one day because she's obsessed with the transgender.
She just tweeted no balls in the bathroom. I mean, like, she's disgusting.
What is her obsession with this?
I don't know. I mean, I have some thoughts, but we'll leave it at that. She's also a self-professed rape victim, and that's why George Stephanopoulos asked it that way of her about how could she support Donald Trump. And she said, "Oh, I got shamed. by." This is part of her personal story that she campaigned on. Joni Henseth. Jody Ernst. Sorry, I want to make them married. I know Sidley's laughing right now. I want to marry Hegseth and Ernst. She's a rape victim. She talks about it
just because of the names, not because of
No, because I always get the names.
Yeah. I just wanted to clarify.
I merge them in my mind.
Yeah, it's not that as my daughter would say, it's not like you ship them together.
That's right. So Donald Trump takes on ABC and wins. Now he's all bold. So now let's go after the Des Moines Register. Because Ann Seltzer, a longtime pollster, got it wrong. I mean, let's be honest, she got it wrong. It's criminal how much of a 16-point differential she had in the win. But the reality is there's no damage. So Donald Trump didn't file because he thinks he's actually going to win a consumer fraud case in Iowa. What is the Des Moines Register going to do? Are they going to follow the lead of ABC News and Disney and go, yeah, we're out. We don't really need to pick a fight for Donald Trump. He's here for 4 years. We're here for 200 years, whatever the time they've been around. And no, we're not going to take him on. Or are they going to do the right thing and stand up for democracy, First Amendment, and freedom of the press? And now he's going after Liz Cheney. What did you have to make about all that and Liz Cheney's response to Donald Trump and about her job on the Jan 6 committee and how she's not that worried about being prosecuted or convicted?
Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points. First of all, it's just so shameful what's happening. This, it's like complying in advance, or that people are talking about. It's like bowing in advance to the dictator kind of thing. It's really terrifying. This ABC settlement, as you said, that they would do something like that and settle that case. I don't think that case would have survived a motion to dismiss. I mean, that case is one where you've got First Amendment on your side, right? You got a federal judge that says it's technically rape because New York is one of the only one of the only places that to be rape. It is so backwards, the New York law. The only way it can be rape is if it's male genitals inserted into or has contact with, I should say, male genital to a female genital. That's it. Male genital to any other part of any other of a woman's body, not rape. Same thing, male to male, not rape. Female to male, not rape. It has to be the penis to the vagina. There has to be, it has to penetrate no matter how slight. That's the legal definition of rape. And although the penetration element of it was met in this case, E. Jean Carroll said she couldn't tell what he penetrated her with. It could have been, could have been that, or it could have been a finger, which I don't know what that says about things, but she didn't know. And so as a result, the jury said, okay, because New York has this, it was not consensual. It was by force, and there was penetration. It had all the elements. She just wasn't sure what was inserted. Oh, by the way, a foreign object also doesn't count. You have to know that it was a male, a penis. So, that's the definition of rape in New York. I think it should be updated. Anyone anyone who's ever been sexually assaulted in any other way. If it was a slightly different area, it's still rape. Rape is rape, and the term for raping someone by, like, say, oral sex rape, that's called criminal sexual act. You don't say, "Oh my God, I was criminally sexually acted." You say, "I was raped." If anyone's forcibly required, if anyone uses force to orally rape somebody, you say, "I was raped." And that's how that is what it is, and so just because New York law technically has this weird quirk to it, and Judge Kaplan, in E. Jean Carroll clarified that and said on the record, no, it's rape because New York is backwards in this way. And so just the fact that they would settle, I understand why people settle now that I've been in private practice for a bit. It's because litigation's expensive. It's extremely expensive. It's time consuming. Ton of discovery. And with Donald Trump, there's punishment, he's going to punish you the whole way. They're trying to clearly make amends with him, as everybody else seems to be doing, except the Midas Touch Network, which I'm very proud of. But the fact of the matter is, what about deterrence? What does this say to this is just going to, there should be a deterrent factor, right? They should hold their ground because they shouldn't do this again. Kind of like what happened with Fox News and Dominion voting. At the end of the day, they settled, but they settled for a huge number because otherwise, what are you going to do? Just have it be that him do this all the time? I mean, there was literally no deterrent factor here, and it's really upsetting that they settled. And not just that they settled, but that they agreed to fund the presidential library. Ew! It's almost like you're endorsing him. It's almost like it's so okay that he sued them over this $15 million that they're going to pay for his legacy. Because that's what a presidential library is. Let's be real. It's his legacy. So anyway, that was really upsetting to me. But you asked about Liz Cheney. I've been somebody who, and I've gotten flack for this in the comments before, because I'm a supporter of Liz Cheney. I think, I want to stand by her because what she did was heroic. Do I agree with her policy positions? I don't. I never have. But I think it's hard to stand up to Donald Trump. I think it's hard to stand up to MAGA. I think it's hard to stand up to the bullying. And I have a lot of respect for her for what she did as a woman, as a public servant, and as someone who, I feel the same way about Adam Kinzinger. There are people who it's hard. It's hard it's easier for Democrats to do it. It's still hard, you got a target on your back, but it's hard to do that. And she did it, and I think she deserves support for that. And I'm glad she's not worried about it. Hopefully she'll fight. But you brought something up that I just want to also mention. I feel like I'm on a roll today. Sorry, Popak, I don't mean to be dominating this conversation, but pardons, the issue of pardons and Biden giving pardons, is he going to give these preemptive pardons to people like Liz Cheney? That's why I thought about it. There's some people who've come out and said, I don't want a pardon. And I'm like, you don't want a pardon? Why don't you want a pardon? I mean, everyone should want a pardon. And there's a whole debate out there. And there's a lot of people who say they don't want a pardon because they think it's an admission that you did something wrong. I find that interesting. That would have never crossed my mind or dawned on me. To me, it's like an insurance policy. Why, when you have someone like Donald Trump who's going out there and saying he's going to threaten, he's threatening to go after his enemies. I mean, they're saying it out loud, right? Listen to their words. They've published lists. Kash Patel has published a list. People are saying it out loud that this is what they're going to do. I mean, have life insurance. I have life insurance. I hope I never need it ever. I mean, obviously I will one day, but I have life insurance. And to me, it's like that, right? It's like having something like that. So I don't know if she wants one or not, but it just brought up that topic. But I think, look, I hope more people can hold strong against this because it is really terrifying what's happening, and they're weaponizing they're threatening to weaponize the courts, to weaponize the Department of Justice, to weaponize law enforcement. And when people settle, like ABC did, when they have a clear-cut case that they could have won, again, I understand why people settle sometimes. I worry what it will do to others. It does worry me.
I agree. They got to follow our lead. They got to fight back. They can't take it. We've been going on and on internally about, like, bring it. You want to bring a suit against us? Bring a suit against us. We haven't done anything wrong. We give proper commentary and opinion. You may not like it, but somebody's gonna have to fight back, and so that's what being independent is all about. We're going to talk about after our next ad break. We're going to talk about somebody who is a heroine, also a hero, also Maggie Carpenter, Dr. Maggie Carpenter, one of the founders of the Abortion Coalition for Telemedicine Act, and her fight for American freedom and for women's rights. In fighting back against Texas, who has decided that the Shield law in New York doesn't protect them from giving and prescribing through telemedicine and telehealth medication abortion pills like mifepristone. And now she's been attempted to be dragged into court, in state court in Texas over it. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Matt Gaetz, because it looks like the report's going to be coming out before the end of the 118th Congress on Jan 3. And some weird threats by Matt Gaetz not to go away. I thought he went away. I thought we got rid of Matt Gaetz and we'd only have to see him on the Matt Gaetz show, which I just heard from Michael Cohen that he wants to appear on. But, well, that's for another time. But the Matt Gaetz show, but I guess to pump up the ratings of the Matt Gaetz show, Matt Gaetz is threatening not to go away, to return from the dead, come back to the 118th Congress, maybe it's the 119th Congress, and as a rule of order, a point of order, expose all the other Congress people that he says are sexual predators or settled sexual harassment or discrimination cases. Oh, that's interesting. And then we'll talk about TikTok. And are we TikToking the countdown of the forced sale of the U.S. entity by China, or is the United States Supreme Court going to step in and say the Chinese have First Amendment rights too? But first, another word from our sponsors. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored advice to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then, Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game, because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does. Optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep, etc. It can also track your cycle and adjust your recommendations to keep your metabolism healthy through hormonal shifts, so you can keep up your energy and stave off cravings. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/legalaf to get 15% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/legalaf for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Let's face it, after a night with drinks, I don't bounce back the next day like I used to. I have to make a choice. I can either have a great night or a great next day. That is, until I found Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink. Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Now look, I won't lie. I was a bit on the fence about pre-alcohol initially. But then, while hanging out with my fantasy football draft crew over at our favorite Jersey Shore sports bar, I gave it a shot. And believe me, It's the real deal. I spent the entire next day doing all my favorite things with my family, including a long hike on our favorite trail. I kept hearing about pre-alcohol, and I wondered what it was actually like. But now that I've tried it, I believe the hype. And with their GMO technology, they will release different products that help address toxic byproducts of modern living in the gut. Go to zbiotics.com/legalaf to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use LegalAF at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/legalaf and use the code LegalAF at checkout for 15% off. Okay. Sponsors, free subscription. We've got Midas as a Substack, Midas Plus. You can get commercial-free versions of this on Midas Plus. You can get commercial-free versions of this podcast on Patreon. And then you can also help support the build of Legal AF, the YouTube channel, Legal AF MTN for Midas Touch Network. Come over there, hit the blue free subscribe button and help us build that channel. Tune into Karen's show, not just on Wednesdays, but on Thursdays on Mistrial with Danya Perry and Kathleen Rice and all the other things that go into the Midas universe. And make sure you check out that Joe Biden exclusive interview with Ben Meiselas, the Midas Touch Network, that I believe is going to be going up tomorrow. If somebody will poke me if I'm wrong. Really proud of that and what it reflects in the 4.5 years that the brothers and others helped build this network. Karen, let's turn to Maggie Carpenter. What you learn about that case and Shield Law, and let's break it down for our listeners and followers. This is another example of a profile in courage, right? They did this on purpose in order to get sued. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, like it's just very interesting because, what did Trump say? Oh, leave it up to the states. That's what everybody wants, right? Leave it up to the states. Okay, so a lot of states have been doing a lot of stuff. Some are banning abortions completely. Some are limiting abortions, and some are protecting abortions. And New York is one of the states that, after the Dobbs decision, decided to protect abortion in New York in many different ways. And in one of the ways was to create this shield law so that if people come to New York and to seek an abortion, you can't sue the doctors who do it here. Same thing about telemedicine and prescribing mifepristone. And these shield laws, I think, are great because it gives access to abortion to women all over the country. And so the number one way people get abortion today is through the medical assisted abortion, right? With these medications, one of them being mifepristone, is the abortion pill. And that's one of the ways, it's the main way that most people do these days. And so if you remember, there was this nationwide ban on mifepristone by Judge Kaczmarek in Texas that got lifted, thankfully. But that was a MAGA attempt to say, okay, leave it up to the states, not so much. And so what do? They go to the one county in Texas that has one judge, so that it's called forum shopping. You shop for the judge and you go there and bring this nationwide injunction against this. He granted it and gave some huge sanctimonious Bible study about, life and abortion. And, but thankfully that was overturned. And now with telemedicine and telehealth, who doesn't participate in some sort of telemedicine, telehealth these days? Everybody does, and which is an amazing thing. It's given access to people all over the country to some of the finest doctors there are and to medications that they might not have access to. You go to rural, those of us who live in big cities and where there's so many hospitals to choose from and the best doctors in the world, we're spoiled, right? We have access to medicine, but people who live in upstate New York, for example, in some towns that have 3,000 people and they're not near a big city, they might not have the same kind of access to certain types of doctors and to telehealth and then to certain medications. I'm sorry, they don't have access to the doctors unless they had telehealth. And so telehealth is this incredible thing that now is being used for abortion pills. And, look, here we have the perfect storm here. A 20-year-old woman became pregnant. She lived in Texas. She couldn't get an abortion there. Telehealth into New York, gets the abortion pill, goes to the hospital, and now you have a lawsuit where the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is filing against this doctor, basically saying you can't prescribe abortion pills to people. To people in our state. What's interesting to me is the criminal aspect of this. I'd love to hear your civil analysis, but the criminal potential is what's interesting to me because in criminal law, if you commit a crime in one state and you flee to another state, or if you're charged with a crime in one state, but you are in another state, you can issue an arrest warrant and give it to the whole country. And there's this kind of extradition agreement amongst all states, they've all signed it, where everyone agrees that if a fugitive from one state is found in another state, we will arrest them based on your warrant, bring them to court. And if you want them, we'll hold the body, essentially. If you want them, you have to file what's called an extradition warrant, or they can waive extradition. And so what's interesting to me is what Governor Hochul of New York said, which is if somebody issues, let's say hypothetically, Texas issued a arrest warrant with filed charges and an arrest warrant against this doctor for prescribing the abortion, and put this arrest warrant in the nationwide database and sent law enforcement and said, go arrest her. Like say she's driving down the street and she gets pulled over and they run her in the system, with the driver's license, which what they do, a warrant pops up. What cops do is they arrest you, even though it has nothing to do with what they just pulled you over for, and they take you in. What Governor Hochul said is she's not going to cooperate with any attempt to extradite somebody that based on the Shield Law, and based on the laws of New York. I thought that was interesting. I think that's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. As you said, this looks like a test case, and so this is really going to push this. Leave it up to the states. Really push all the issues.
Yeah, I think shield laws are appropriate. I think that they're going to, of course, the Dr. Maggie Carpenter, an act purposely prescribed into Texas because it's the right thing to do under their Hippocratic oath. And with the benefit of shield law, if they didn't have the shield law in place, they wouldn't have done it. But the shield law protects them operating out of New York and not allowing another state to cross over and sue them for practicing medicine, or in this case, telemedicine, across state lines. I mean, I'm sure they'll get some sort of Texas ruling against it, and then it will end up in federal court and end up at the United States Supreme Court. We'll be talking about it probably sometime in this term. And then this Supreme Court's going to have to grapple with that ultimate decision. Are there, 50% of abortions in America are through medication abortions, not in clinics, not with doctors. It's the truth. And so now they're going to have to grapple with, what do you do with medication abortions and pills being supplied into states that ban abortion? And they already had tackled one Texas judge trying to do a nationwide ban, Judge Kaczmarek, on the FDA approval of this back in 2001, in which all the studies show that these drugs are safer, not as safe, safer than common aspirin or Tylenol. So it's going to get to the Supreme Court. That's what Texas wants, of course, because they want to continue to roll back a woman's right to choose, make her a second-class citizen. And I'm just glad the Maggie Carpenters of the world still exist, heroes. And it's a stark contrast to what corporate media owned by oligarchs and owned by companies that worry about their shareholders more than they worry about the First Amendment business that they're in and what they do. Let's turn to Matt Gaetz in the brief remaining time in TikTok. Pardon me. So we got the new news, Karen, that finally, for some reason, after Matt Gaetz has decided he's going to withdraw, or he got fired from running for attorney general. Now we got this like out of the blue. We weren't expecting it. We thought it was like done and buried. The bipartisan House Ethics Committee has decided to release the Gaetz report. Now, just to bring everybody up to speed, you know how I know there's no weaponization of the Department of Justice under Joe Biden? Because they didn't go after Matt Gaetz, and they dropped the investigation of Matt Gaetz, probably for many reasons, like they don't want to be bothered. The guy was running for office. Like they had some questions about one or two of the witnesses, but the Ethics Committee brought in the testimony of at least 3 women. 2 of them were minors at the time, talking about drug-fueled parties and sex that resulted, some of that out of state. And they took in that testimony. Matt Gaetz likes to say, he likes to falsely claim that he was exonerated by the Department of Justice because they dropped the charges. That's not how that works. You rarely, if I'll talk about it from the defense side, you rarely, if ever, get a closeout memo from a prosecutor exonerating you. They may close the file. They may disappear. You never hear from them again. Whereas just moments before, they were all over you and your client, and suddenly it's like, what happened to that? And then it just disappeared because they've moved on to something else. You might get a deferred prosecution agreement. You might get a non-prosecution agreement, but you don't get an absolution. And you don't get, yes, they cleared me. It didn't happen. They just didn't pursue the investigation any longer. They made that prosecutorial decision, that discretion that they have. But that's not the same standard that the Ethics Committee uses about whether one of their members used drugs, used bribery, witness tampering, and other things. It's all. Let's just remember for a moment. But there is a guy named Joel Greenberg who's spending 9 years in a federal prison for doing the exact same things that Matt Gaetz is being accused of with Matt Gaetz. Somebody did it. So we're getting the report now. In advance of the report, Karen? What did you see? What Matt Gaetz did in advance?
No, what did he do?
Oh, of course he posted.
When he said with his post, yeah.
Yeah, so tell our audience. What'd you say?
No, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, he said, well, I guess he's in his 40s, I don't know. When I was in my 30s.
Yeah, it's too gross for me to say.
Okay. I partied hard, I womanized. I love the sane washing around the word womanized.
That's so rapey.
it's very rapey. Thank you. Allegedly rapey. This whole like I was a rapscallion that womanized. I hate it. It's such an old timey phrase for sexual predator behavior against women and misogyny that we need to get rid of that. That needs to be canceled once and for all. It was back in JFK. I was just like JFK, betting girls, like fuck you. Pardon me, beep that out. Of course he comes out with that because now he's happily married, right? So now it's like I worked hard, I played hard, womanized, drank a lot, but that's not a crime. I'm like, all right, let's see what's in the report. I've always had a working theory that he knows what's in the report because even though it's a bipartisan commission, it's one of the few bipartisan committees in Congress. I think it's 6 Republicans and 6 Democrats. It's led by the chairperson is of the majority party, which is Republican. And like 24 hours after that guy, that Republican, came out and said, well, we're going to vote to release the report unless Matt Gaetz resigns. And it was like on cue. It was like call and response. Matt Gaetz was like, so I resign from my position. I'm like, somebody tipped this guy off as to what is in that report.
No,
and it's not pretty.
He knows what's in the report because he was there when it happened. He did it. He knows how bad the conduct is. That's why. I mean, who better to know what happened than him? It's true.
Sometimes the obvious is I miss the obvious, which is, yes, he did it.
He did it. He knows how bad it is. He doesn't want that coming out. This
is like the old Howard Stern line when OJ was still alive, when OJ used to give out money as a reward for the killer, if somebody would identify the killer of Nicole Brown Simpson. And Howard Stern was like, this is going to be the easiest money I've ever done. It was OJ. Hey, I'm going to get that money. So that's same. You're right. He knows he did it. He knows that report. He knows
what he did. So he knows if it comes out what he did in the report, it's horrendous.
So here's the one that's going to make you happy because you and I debated about whether his resigning created a vacancy under the statute that governs vacancies. That means there's no backseas when you do vacancy creation. At least that's how I read the statute. And they were already doing special elections in his district to replace him. But he floated a trial balloon in another social media post today that I thought of you immediately, because it said, somebody told me I should do the following. And then he had it was like a recipe. Like he gave all the ingredients. He's like, 1, I returned to the 118th and I unresign. I'm like, oh, here we go. 2, I swear in on the 119th. I was elected after all. He put that in parentheses.
Yep.
3, as a point of order, which has to be, any member of Congress can bring up a point of order, which has to be immediately investigated within 48 hours. I raised the issue of all the slush funds used. And this is what Marjorie Taylor Greene has said in the past. All the slush funds used to cover up other sexual misconduct by members of Congress, not named Matt Gaetz. I'm like, well, here we go. Here's the cannibalization. And I should do that all before I start my own Matt Gaetz show. So you take it from there, Karen.
I mean, look, I'm not going to gloat, but it seemed very obvious to me that he wanted to keep all his options open. The way he did it was a little bit too cute by half, as they say, or whatever that phrase is. And he's keeping his options open. That's what I always thought, because he knows how bad this is. He doesn't want it to come out. And so he was hoping by resigning, he could crush it, go off and become attorney general. Well, that didn't work because he's that bad. He's like nuclear and toxic. So he's like, okay, I'll go be make money and be the next Joe Rogan or whoever he wants to be. And then he sees, okay, but no, the report's going to come out anyway. So he's threatening. It's kind of like a threat. I mean, that's kind of what he's doing. But I saw it always as he's keeping his options open so that it's like a game of villainous chess. So.
Yeah, he is villainous. I'd like him to go away for a very long time. Speaking of I have no segue for this. Let's talk about the United States Supreme Court. I'll posit it this way for you in the remaining time that we have. Do the Chinese and the Chinese government have First Amendment rights, Karen, that the Supreme Court will recognize to force them to cancel out another Biden policy and law on the books that compels TikTok and its Chinese government owner to sell the U.S. subsidiary, allow the TikTok to operate in the United States by selling it to somebody that's not Chinese? And does that violate, as the ACLU of all entities, which doesn't surprise me, has argued, violate the First Amendment? What do you think, Karen?
I don't think it does. I think it's pretty clear that the First Amendment is not absolute. There are restrictions on the First Amendment, right? You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. There's all sorts of things. And, you can't also jeopardize national security, right? And if Congress passed a law, basically, essentially addressing this issue, and that law is going up to the United States Supreme Court, and we'll see what they say. But, the thing about that is, the Supreme Court taking this case, and what they essentially said, the question that they're going to hear, when they granted cert, the question is whether protecting Americans from foreign so there's this a statute called Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act. Okay, it's a mouthful. So the question is whether the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act, as applied to the petitioners, violates the First Amendment. And that's what they're going to decide is that statute that was passed by Congress, whether that violates the First Amendment. I think it absolutely does not, but Donald Trump, gave a dog whistle to his court. He basically said, when asked how you feel about TikTok, he went on and on about his son and the young people like it, and they want the youth, and so I have a warm spot for TikTok. I mean, saying he has a warm spot for TikTok, it really felt like a Supreme Court dog whistle. It really felt like he was basically saying to them, and I don't know if it's because he's in with the billionaire, kind of social media people. I don't know what it is, but it felt like he was sending them a message like, if this could go either way, I have a warm spot for them. Keep that in mind. The young people like them. The young people more, the Republicans always had a hard time, is what he said, with the young people. But we won, we got 30%, something more than that, of the vote of the youth. And so essentially, he was basically saying to the Supreme Court, if you like the way things are going and you want to keep it that way, keep TikTok.
Yeah, look, Donald Trump changed his position on TikTok after one of his major donors, who is a big TikTok investor, basically told him to. This is another Donald Trump for sale. He announced a couple of days ago, literally, we're for sale. If you have $1 billion, I feel like I was watching an infomercial at like 4:00 in the morning. Do you have $1 billion to invest in the United States? Then come on in and we'll speed you through all regulatory approvals, including environmental, ! He actually wrote that. And then like 2 days later, right on cue, SoftBank was like, we'll do $100 billion. And I'm thinking, with or without the fraud that came with your last investment in America. And so Donald Trump, they're all the oligarchs and investors, are whispering in Donald Trump's ear and convinced him to back off what in 2020 was a pretty firm stance against TikTok. And then suddenly it started to soften after this major donor to Donald Trump started telling him that his own interests were in TikTok, despite the Chinese government ownership. You got Donald Trump inviting the premier of China to come to the inauguration. Okay, I don't see him inviting the other allies. First of all, usually at inaugurations, it's not the premiers and the presidents. It's usually the ambassadors and other slightly lower level people from a diplomacy standpoint. But because Donald Trump's figured out that he and his family and his family office are going to make a lot of money with China. And not having a trade war with them is good. And not making them, and I mean the Chinese government, because it's really sovereign owned, sell TikTok is probably a good thing. And Donald Trump doesn't care about national security or national intelligence. And I'll posit this. Anybody that truly cared about America and its defense, national security of America, would not put Tulsi Gabbard in and nominate her to be the head of the National Intelligence Directorate. Just wouldn't. Wouldn't have Pete Hegseth as defense secretary if you really cared about that.
Wouldn't have classified documents spilling, in his bathroom, spilling out all over the place. I'm sorry if I have.
Am I supposed to acknowledge that you've changed location?
I'm sorry that my battery just about to die, and I'm like, okay, I unplug from the mic and plug in and
right. I love it, but with such a plum. Such grace.
A lot happens off camera,
and with one leg.
But it was not easy to hobble over here. I'll tell you that. I
had to plug in my computer at some point when you were doing part of it, and I almost just to show you how more graceful you are than me, and you're one-legged. I almost tripped in my hotel room just moving an inch to plug in the computer. I almost tripped into the chair. Okay, well, live TV, everybody. So. The Supreme Court's going to take it up. The interesting thing, though, is the timing, Karen, because the Supreme Court's going to take it up like a week or two before the inauguration. Biden administration Solicitor General is going to be arguing. However, is this going to be a little gift to the incoming president where he gets to declare that TikTok that helped got him elected along with Baron Trump or whatever else his argument is. And the podcast bros, not named Midas, Mycellus, is this going to be their gift? They're going to have to struggle with these. I don't think it's a struggle, though. But you do have major civil liberties entities and public interest groups like the ACLU who have said that Chinese have First Amendment rights. And you can't force them to sell a platform just because but it's the just because you part. Just because we've allowed a foreign entity, Donald Trump says we're under invasion by undocumented aliens. We're really under invasion by Iran, China, and Russia, who are using social media and platforms like this as disinformation campaigns to foment discontent, to create frisson, to put us at each other's throats. And Donald Trump colludes in that, not directly by coordinating his efforts with that, but benefiting from that creation of fomented discontent, putting each other and creating a seething United States. Donald Trump only succeeds when America is seething in a cauldron. A calm, pacific, tepid America does not create a Donald Trump. So he wants us seething. So he benefits. So he's never going to shut down the Russians and Iranians and Chinese who are trying to brainwash us through social media and Facebook and everything else. He's never going to, because that's not to his interests. Now we're going to have to see what the United States Supreme Court does along with all of this. So we've reached the end, Karen. I know you plugged in, so that's good. We've reached the end of another great episode of Legal AF on the Midas Touch Network. You're going to be seeing Karen this week. She can't talk about it, but you're going to be seeing Karen on Thursday. Big arraignment in New York.
Yeah.
All right. Against the client that their name shall remain nameless right here, but you know it.
We've always been practicing lawyers, Popak. We've always talked about that. And, sometimes our schedules, you see us podcasting from all over the country in different areas because life goes on and we continue to practice. So yeah. I really, really appreciate you. Love you and what you do and the courage that you bring to it. Yeah. So until our next time, support our sponsors, support the Midas Touch Network, help us continue to grow our pro-democracy, freely, independent. Boy, now more than ever is that important in the America that we're now in. So until our next episode on Saturday with Ben Meiseles, we get to talk about the Joe Biden interview. That's going to be really fun. And other hot takes along the way here on the Legal AF YouTube channel. This is Michael Popak and Karen Friedman-Agnifilo signing off. Shout out to the Midas Mighty and the Legal AFers.